We produce energy. We transform energy into brilliant ideas for a greener planet. For medicine. For clean water. For safer food. For our future. Energy for life. Rosatom.
Hello. Oh, yes. Good day, everybody. On behalf of the organizers, we are pleased and honored to welcome you today on this session. For the first words of introduction, I would like to present our respected hosts and partners. Ms. Tatiana Terentьeva, Deputy CEO, HR Director of Rosatom. Mr. Raoul Abad, Director General of Operations Division, Federal Authority for Nuclear Regulation, UAE. Mr. Clapping is absolutely okay. Don't continue. So, thanks. Thank you. Mr. Ramiro Pizarro, Chief Technical Advisor, International Labour Organization, Moscow office. Mr. Matthias Torrens, Deputy Secretary General, International Organization of Employers. Thank you very much, and to kick us off, I would like to offer the first words of introduction to Ms. Tatiana Terentьeva. Please.
Okay. Dear Mr. Award, Mr. Torrens, Mr. Pizarro, dear colleagues and dear guests, on behalf of the company, I would like to welcome you all at the Human Centricity Day, at the launch of our Rosatom thematic week. The tagline of the current expo in Dubai is "Connecting Minds, Creating the Future." Very inspiring one. Today we have an unique chance to raise public profile of human centricity. We will also lay down the foundation for future human-centric partnerships. We will make one step further in prioritizing a human being. By connecting our minds, we will create a better world and a more sustainable future. A sense of partnership among all stakeholders is crucial as never. The title of the Rosatom thematic week is Breakthrough Technologies for Sustainable Future. And I believe that this is an outstanding opportunity to present our company's priorities set in our strategy Vision 2030. Rosatom is one of the largest players in the global nuclear energy market with a diverse team, 300,000 employees. Currently, we are in the process of increasing our international footprint. We are expanding into new geographical markets and new industries. We are working in the sectors of nuclear medicine, energy storage, composite materials, wind energy, developing Northern Sea route, and much more. Nuclear energy brings value to the world through clean energy. It provides access to quality food, clean water. It saves lives of cancer patients. It creates new jobs. It helps reskilling thousands of people and improves standards of living. Basically, everything we do is aligned with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. Having said that, it is very important that we start the Rosatom Week with the Human Centricity Day. One of the Rosatom Vision 2030 priorities is to become the best in unlocking the talent of our employees, to build a sustainable talent pipeline and create a fundamental condition for human development potential. Human centricity allows us to nurture talents at a young age and create a flexible and adaptive system of career development. At our today's session, senior representatives of state, academia, and business will discuss up-to-date HR trends and an ever-changing relationship among employees, and societies. The younger generation with the different values and opinions is on the doorstep to the labor market, which has to conform to demands of young professionals. I know that today with us we have students from GPGN School, Dubai and Khalifa University, who watches us online, and young people from other universities. I challenge you to think more about human centricity and what your future employers should do to support your interest in this important field. The pilot study on the Human Centricity Index that my company and BCG will present in today's session is a major attempt to answer the following questions. What organizations have to do to be really human-centric? How we need to change to be equipped to build future-ready talent pipelines? What role models and corporate strategies we need to promote to effectively approach the skills gap? I hope to see more companies from Middle East region to join our initiative and believe in their warm welcome for human centricity. I am looking forward to our discussion, which will become a perfect case of business cooperation and multi-stakeholders networking. And once again, I would like to greet you on behalf of Rosatom, and I wish all of us fruitful discussion and bright ideas. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tatiana. Mr. Raoul Abbott, we would like you to continue with the introduction part. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Actually, I like the topic of today. It's a very interesting topic. For years, for hundreds of years, the main outcome of any business used to be only profit. And since the 80s, when Mintzberg and Porter and the other start talking about the social role of the organization and the social responsibility, it starts spreading and start to be more human face of the business. Those people, Porter, Mintzberg, and others, they said that one of the major stakeholders that you need to satisfy for sustainability of your business is the employees and the community. And that really what we need to learn about human centricity and what we need to concentrate on of the human face of the business. The human centricity is not only a tool, but a vision that empower employees, empower community, and transform the organization to a learning organization that give back to their employee and to the community. At the Federal Authority for Nuclear Regulation, our mandate is to regulate and give assurances on the peaceful use of nuclear energy and the protection of the employee, the public, and the environment from the harmful effect of ionizing radiation. But one part of our mission is to develop and build the capacity of our Emiratis colleague. And to do that, we follow two streams. The first stream is sponsoring scholarship, undergraduate and postgraduate in national and international academic institution. In addition to this one, our employees start giving back to the community. Our staff are mentoring high school students, and particularly in the topic of science and technology. They are also very active in the outreach to the community. We have something here in the UAE, we call the Majlis, where the community leader meet with our expert to discuss and to explain the nuclear program in the UAE, which is very effective give back to the community that our staff is doing. I don't want to be long. One of the idea that I would like you to, and I quote in this one, Simon Sink, who said, "Exceptional organizations prioritize the well-being of their people, and in return, their people give everything they got to protect and advance the well-being of the organization." Today we will listen, and I'm really eager to see this human centricity index and how it's developed, but we will see, we will listen to some new visions, some new approaches that very, very important and very effective, and we would like to learn from you on these topics. Thank you very much for Rosatom to organizing this one, and thank you for all of you for attending. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. for your encouragement. Can I please ask Mr. Ramiro Pizarro to continue with the introduction? Thank you. Mr. Pizarro, hello.
Thanks, hello. Many thanks for your invitation. I think it's a recognition that a human-centric approach to sustainability is a common and shared concern. The International Labour Organization began to develop a human-centered agenda as part of the preparation of the ILO Centenary in 2019. There are 3 milestones in this long journey. The report Work for a Brighter Future, prepared by an independent global commission. The adoption of the ILO Centenary Declaration on the Future of Work, and recently, in June 2021, the ILO reaffirmed this strategic vision, adopting by unanimity the global call to action for a human-centered recovery. Let me say a few words about these 3 milestones to explain the ILO human-centered approach. The Global Commission report developed for first time a human-centered agenda for the future of work by placing people and the work they do at the center of economic and social policy and business practice. This agenda focuses on 3 pillars of action: investing in people capabilities, enabling them to acquire skill, reskill, upskill through the various transitions they will face over their working life. Investing in labor market institutions to ensure a future of work with freedom, dignity, economic security, and equality. Finally, investing in decent and sustainable work and shaping rules and incentives for aligning economic and social policies and business practice with a human-centered agenda. Second, the ILO Centenary Declaration invited government, employers, and workers' organizations to build a human-centered transition to a future of work, taking into consideration the economic, social, and environmental dimension at a time of transformative change in the world of work, driven by technological innovation, demographic shift, environmental and climate change, and globalization. Particularly relevant for this conference today are the concept of investing in people capabilities and developing national lifelong learning system for promoting the acquisition of skill, competence, and qualification for all workers through their working life to address existing and anticipated skill gaps and ensure that the education system and training are responsive to world of work needs. The Centenary Declaration opened an opportunity for enterprise and business community to be active players for facilitating access to decent work for a specific category of workers: young people, older workers, and women. With an emphasis on the effective integration of young people into the labor market, the declaration highlighted the importance of enterprise for facilitating young people transition from education and training to work, supporting measures that help older workers to work in productive and healthy conditions until their retirement, and as a key element for the attainment of inclusive and sustainable growth, to achieve tangible progress on gender equality at work, building a transformative agenda through social dialogue and placing at the center worker rights. Finally, in June 2021, government, employers, and worker delegates from 181 countries adopted the global call to action for a human-centered recovery. Considering your ongoing discussion on the corporate human-centric index, here in this global call to action, there is an invitation to consider 4 critical areas of progress. First, how enterprise contribute to an inclusive economic growth and employment, to foster investment with large job creation potential, supporting small enterprise, skill development, and environmental sustainability. Secondly, redoubling effort to promote fundamental rights and international labor standards to protect workers, including on issues such as adequate wage, limit for working time, and a strong occupational and health measure. A third area is the enterprise contribution to universal social protection, starting with income security, employment protection, and essential health care. Finally, considering the important role played by social dialogue in the national response to the COVID-19 pandemic, the ILO, the International Labour Organization, invited to strengthen the consultation between government and social partners on issues of common interest for developing a human-centered agenda for the future of work. We expect that these 3 milestones can help you to build a strategic framework and a roadmap for your ongoing discussion on a human-centric approach for corporate sustainability. I wish the best in your conference. Many thanks again for your invitation.
Thank you very much, Mr. Pizarro. I hope you hear the applause from the studio. If I may ask Mr. Thorns to say the last but not the least words of introduction before we kick in the main session. Mr. Thorns, please.
Thank you, dear Ms. Terentiev, dear Mr. Awad, dear ladies and gentlemen. It's a great pleasure to be here today and discuss such an important issue. My name is Matthias Thorns, and I'm from the IE, the International Organization of Employers. Perhaps 2 words about the IE. We are the biggest network of the private sector in the world. Our members are the National Employers Federation in 150 countries, representing more than 50 million companies. And we're very proud to have in Russia, for instance, with RSPP, a very important and very high regarded member in our global employers family. The index touches on an important issue, the access to talent. We know from many studies that companies have lacking access to talent. More than 80% of companies face critical skills gap, and these critical skills gap actually hinder them to grow, to employ more people, to be more business resilient. It was during the Russian G20 presidency in 2013 that the IE has set up the GLAN, the Global Apprenticeships Network. And the aim of the GLAN is to, together with the ILO, together with companies, together with the OECD, to improve skill building systems in countries and to support member companies to strengthen their activities in skilling and reskilling. And that is indeed one of the key issues. You need, on the one hand, companies to engage on the issue of skills building, but you need at the same time also governments to provide education and training systems which are in line with labor market needs. No actor can do it alone. Governments alone will be completely overwhelmed to make sure that their training and education systems are in line with labor market needs, in view of the very quickly developing technological progress and of AI. So they need to include the representative employers organizations to ensure that their systems are meeting the demands of companies. And companies, of course, also need the engagement of governments. Why do we do that? We do that in order to support companies to have the skills they need, they need, but more importantly, to ensure that people, that workers have the skills to get into employment and to make full use of their talent. Colleagues, employees also have a key role to play to look after their employability. We know from global studies that only 42% of all employees do not take up possibilities for lifelong learning which are offered by their employers. And this is not good enough. We need to have a mindset of lifelong learning, and this mindset of lifelong learning to constantly look into the employability needs to be brought into the curricula already of schools. Otherwise, we will not be able to keep pace with the changing landscapes of skills building. There are a lot of international frameworks, and Mr. Ramiro already spoke about it. You know, the importance of the ILO instruments. One important ILO instrument is the ILO M&E Declaration, which focuses on many issues on which the index is focusing on. The IE, together with the ILO, developed a self-assessment tool for companies so they can see in how far their internal policies, also on skills building, is in line with the ILO M&E Declaration, and we will launch it with ILO DG Guy Ryder in 4 weeks. It would be important to connecting the dots to ensure that we don't duplicate, but really complement each other. Benchmarks are important. They're important, as you said, Madame Terentiev, to show companies what is expected from them. But of course, benchmarks also create peer pressure for companies to act. And action is crucial at the moment because we only have 8 years left for the Agenda 2030 and for reaching the SDGs. So now it's the time to walk the talk, and we really appreciate the efforts of Rosatom together with Boston Consulting with this index to activate more companies. So thank you so much. I wish you much luck and success with your index, and I wish you fruitful discussions today. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Thorns, and again, Mr. Pizarro, Mr. Awad, and Ms. Terentьева. With this, let us indeed start our exploration of this, of the world of human centricity. And before we do, let's say a few words. Let's get some more methodological clarity, if you will, of what we as an audience understand as human centricity. And our suggestion to you is this. We will understand human centricity as simply the scope of everything that a company gives back. Gives back to whom? To employees, to their families and communities they live in, and then, of course, to the wider society. If you think of it practically, this is an intersection between good HR governance and ESG. And it is very logically clear because the HR guidance, you need to be able to derive the most out of the human capital you're using as the employers. And the ESG, you need to create a context for the human capital to thrive in. And further explore this topic and hopefully also derive some practical implications for everybody. What we will do is we will go from up to down. We will go from vision. And on vision, we will hear from Mr. Gary Bowles, chair of the Future of Work Singularity University. Down to aspects. Hello, Gary. We see you on the screen. We'll get back to you in just a minute. Great. Down to aspects of how the human capital is coined and strengthened, which is education. And here we will hear from Dr. Dirk Meissner, Head of Laboratory of Economics of Innovation, National Research University, Higher Schools of Economics, Russia. Dr. Stephen Griffiths, Senior Vice President, R&D, Khalifa University, UAE. And Dr. Christopher Abraham, Professor and Head of Dubai Campus, SP Jain School of Global Management, UAE as well. And from the educational view of the world, we will get down to how the business views human centricity and derive practical implications from this. And here we will start with our honorable guest, Maha Al-Katan. Thank you very much for being with us, Maha Al-Katan, Chief People Officer, GP World UAE. Then we go to Andre Dabdub, also Chief People Officer, CCC Athens. And we conclude our session with a view from a corporate education expressed by Yulia Uzhakina, CEO, Corporate Academy, Rosatom from Russia. then hopefully, after exploring all these dimensions of human centricity, we can also discuss with you briefly on how you can practically measure, how you can practically improve on being more human-centric, being more human-centric. Thank you very much. And let's take it away with Gary. Gary, as a specialist in the future of work and future of education, the first question to you would be, what do you think is now changing in the relationship between organizations and people? Is the world getting more or less human-centric as we go? Please, Gary.
Mr. Stepanenko and my friends and collaborators at Rosatom, thank you for the opportunity to join you at midnight from San Francisco. And those of you in the audience, I'm sorry I can't be with you today in person, but I look forward to visiting your amazing country again before long. As Anton said, I'm Gary Bowles. I'm the author of a book called The Next Rules of Work and chair for the Future of Work with Singularity University. And Anton, I appreciate the kickoff question. I wanted to offer, I guess, a way to think about the kinds of shifts that we're going through right now, and then some of the ways that the opportunities before us, we can take advantage of them in these unique times. Now, speaking of which, how many times in the past 2 years have those of you in the audience, have you heard someone say that we're living in a unique time in human history? You know, we continue to battle the first global pandemic in a century. A huge percentage of workers around the world had to learn how to dramatically shift to new ways of working overnight when their workplace or their school was no longer available to them. Fractures in supply chains continue to ripple in waves around the planet, and we keep thinking we've cracked the code on this virus, and then another wave begins. So how can we understand these extraordinary times, and especially what kinds of, not just the challenges, but the opportunities that they bring for us? Well, starting nearly 2 years ago, as we were all just beginning to understand what was happening around the globe, I wrote an article offering a new way to think about what I called the Great Reset of work and learning. And I suggested we would go through 3 phases. There would be this initial period of complete uncertainty, then a wavering period of on again, off again life and work and business activity, which is what we're experiencing right now. And then when the global madness would eventually subside, there'd be a 3rd phase of building back and hopefully building back better. And here we are after nearly 2 years, stuck in that uncomfortable middle of this Great Reset. And the impact on human work and human learning is undeniable. Now, when it comes to understanding how dramatically work especially has changed, I often point to what I call the 3 legs of the stool for systemic change: mindset, skill set, and tool set. Now, in the old rules of work, what we all were doing pre-pandemic, in many countries around the world, a traditional mindset towards work focused mostly on making money. The common skill set you would frequently develop was whatever skills the work market needed that day, and often those were the skills that were needed yesterday as well. And the tool set, well, in many industries, the traditional tool set focused on a lot of consistent processes and not so much on the flexible techniques and technologies that could actually transform the way we work. And then along came a virus. That Great Reset of work didn't just change where and when and how we worked. It opened the door for many people to reconsider why they work. Now, in the US, many headlines have proclaimed what's called the Great Resignation, a period where a historic number of people are quitting their jobs for something different or better. I won't bore you with the statistics, but it's probably a little more like the Great Slightly More Resignation. Over a quarter of the US workforce actually quit their jobs by choice back in 2019 by pre-pandemic, and only about a third did so in 2021. So just slightly bigger increase. But there's little question that workers around the world are suddenly exercising their human right to question the rationale for their work, and by connection, the rationale for the organizations with which they work. What this is catalyzing is really what I call a next mindset, rather than the traditional mindset of simply making money at your job. People across the planet are increasingly focusing on the meaning and the purpose of their work. Now, as far as skill sets go, in many countries, the lack of synchronization between workers and available work created a great mismatch of skills. That is, there's lots of available work, but not enough workers in the right place at the right time with the right skills or incentives to do that work. And because the demand for 21st century skills was already rapidly growing, the Great Reset of work sort of pressed the accelerator to the floor to speed the need for this new skill set, this next skill set. And as in you'll hear in the session right after this, it's also changed the rules for educational institutions on how they attract and develop young minds to develop that next skill set. And then finally, as the world has shifted to distributed and remote work and learning, I think every one of us got the memo that the most nimble and adaptive were those who were able to use a next generation tool set of techniques and technologies to communicate, to collaborate, to coordinate, often with people they'd never met before in person. Pre-pandemic, that was mind-blowing, but today we accept these digital connections as common. So that's the seismic shift that we've all experienced in the mindset, the skill set, and the tool set for work and workers around the globe. And I think that's only going to accelerate. But what about the organization? What is the seismic shift in the mindset, skill set, and tool set that the organization must also go through in this Great Reset? Well, it's what we're focused on today. It's the transformation into the human-centric organization. Now, the old rules mindset of an organization was the relentless pursuit of profits and shareholder value, as Mr. Rahul Awad was saying. But when economic inequality grows like wildfire, in just the past 2 years here in the United States, corporate profits rose 50% and billionaire wealth rose 70%. Then promoting economic systems that aggregate all that power and money in the hands of a few, it's not sustainable. And then the skill set of the marketplace that empowers innovation and competition and value creation in the old rules of businesses and organizations might have been okay pre-pandemic, but when society starts to fracture because of the divisiveness fueled by social media, when disruptive companies create amazing products, but also create winner-take-all industries, when our mechanisms of production and consumption for 8 billion people around the planet strain that planet and the very air that we breathe, well, then clearly the skill set of the marketplace so far hasn't been sufficient to inclusively benefit people and the planet. And of course, as the organization increasingly leverages a technology tool set, the pace and the scale of change themselves can have huge ripple effects on society and economies and the planet. But automating factories that displace workers without training them for the skill set of tomorrow's work is not sustainable either. And polluting a planet with an ocean full of plastic is not sustainable for the place that we all live. Now, while my work with Singularity University, I continually champion the ways that exponential technologies will continue to transform our work. Even the tremendous advances of artificial intelligence software and science fiction class robots can have a negative impact on work that's also not sustainable if all that innovation isn't focused on empowering humans to develop what I call superpowers, the skills that they will love to use to solve the most challenging problems of today and tomorrow. So how can we change this? How can you and I together build sustainable models that don't just encourage our organizations to do well and to do good, but requires them to do so? Well, I've been obsessed by this question for over 2 decades when I co-founded an initiative here in the US called SOCAP, Social Capital Markets, where we champion the belief that business could do well and do good. So I believe the answer is we need what I call a next mindset, skill set, and tool set for the organization. And that's why we're here today. So let's start with mindset. The good news is that many who lead in organizations are waking up to the need for greater focus on environmental and social and governance issues. But while the E and the G of ESG are rapidly gaining greater visibility around the world, we still have a huge amount of work to do on the S part of ESG. So our next mindset needs to be anchored in the organization as a vehicle for purpose and meaning. And we call that mindset the human-centric organization. Now, the mindset for the human-centric organization begins with a simple question. How can we ensure that this organization benefits all of the human beings that the organization touches? Rather than benefiting just a small number of humans, well, usually that's the organization's shareholders. How can we benefit the broad range of stakeholders, the workers and employees, the partners and suppliers, the communities in which we operate, our societies and our economies, and of course, the planet? So if that's the mindset of the human-centric organization, then what is the skill set we need to develop? Well, every organization must develop the skill set to create an environment for growth, learning, and well-being for every human in the organization's sphere. They have to help people to develop a North Star that guides them in their career direction. They have to change hiring practices to become far more human-centric and inclusive. Have to invest in human capital through relentless training and development in ways that create broad value for societies and economies, and maximize the potential of every human in your sphere. Then last, but certainly not least, we need a new tool set. We need criteria to help us to assess and track our own efforts. We need benchmarks to allow us to compare our organizations to our peers in our industries and beyond. We need to make strong bonds and even stronger commitments to each other for the ways that we will continually improve how we become more human-centric. And we have to bake those tools into the technology infrastructure of our organizations so that every major activity of the organization inevitably and inexorably is assessed for its impact on and its benefit to humans. And we need to continually update those tools as we collectively grow our understanding of what makes a human-centric organization. That's so much of the work that we're starting here today. So, as we slowly pry ourselves out of this uncomfortable middle of the Great Reset, as we look toward a time where we can begin to build better for that more human-centric future, I believe we're going to look back in the years to come, and we're going to see 2022 as the inflection point for the human-centric organization. The Great Reset has given us a new start date. In every session today, and from this point on, I hope that every single one of us will commit to the new mindset, skill set, and tool set of the human-centric organization. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gary, for this wonderful blend of being visual, inspirational, but also very practical. The next question goes to Dr. Meissner. An attentive eye and ear would have already noticed that we are discussing human centricity with the word human in the center of what we discuss, but we're discussing it mostly through the lens of the employer. What models do we use? What tool set and mindset can we have and adopt as an employer, and so on. But let's step into the human's shoes for a change. Let's discuss how do you think, Dr. Meissner, the workforce is changing, and what will be the workforce of the future? Thank you. I think, yeah, it's best if you just come up here. Thank you very much.
All All right, so thanks for inviting me here and giving me the chance to share my thoughts and perceptions with you. I believe it is a very strong and a hot topic indeed. Corporations until now, what do we see? They are strongly driven by shareholder needs, and especially those listed on the stock exchange by quarterly reporting and two-digit growth rates every quarter, which is absolutely against any human understanding, any centricity parts. So we are talking about employees, labor being happy, being loyal with the company. At the same time, from the shareholders' perspective, they should be cheap. And let's be serious and honest. Even us, we are using delivery services day in, day out, and we know exactly the people delivering the goods to our door, they are absolutely, well, they are not really labor, they are simply cheap production factor. They should be as cheap as possible. And here we come. When we talk about centricity and we talk about people and keeping them loyal, keeping them happy, creative, etc., that contradicts. So that also goes in the mindset of customers. Quite obvious, that has a lot to do with business models. Thinking about how do we train and educate the next generation of employees, what are the crucial things and issues, especially in line with centricity and in line with the digital economy. I can tell you from university perspective, it's our job to train people who follow standards and rules in terms of ethics, responsibility, and sustainability. Ethics is a crucial point here. What do we see frequently? We see frequent students entering a university who take everything for granted. Versus the digital natives, I would call them not natives, but naives. So skip the T, and it means, what do these people do? They assume all information, all data, everything is available somewhere in some database. I don't have to check it, I simply take it. I take it when I do a little bit statistics and I come with wonderful regressions and I explain how the world goes. However, they don't check, are the data true? Are the data fake? Or is it a real observation? And this is a crucial mission for any university in training and education. Make students aware that first of all, you have to learn how to generate and collect information and prepare structured information before you start processing that. Today, most universities educate a lot about big data analysis, data science, and so on. Nice, that's mathematics, statistics, nothing else it is. But when you start collecting the data on your own, you know what you are talking about. Because first you have to ask, what do I want to know? Now, the social media influenced our next generation of digital natives that we simply say, here it is, take it, and they believe it. They believe in everything, and when they're starting processing that, and here the big threat comes, of course, for a corporation, if you have a lot of people working inside, just taking secondary information and data, don't checking about fake or what is plausible inside there, do the analysis, prepare strategic decision, but not a solid foundation. You might see some danger for the future of your business in the short term or the long term, because the decision is not solid anymore. It's not based on real data and real information. That is a big threat. So that's here in terms of ethics for the next generation, what is the mindset together with the skill set. It means that our children more or less, or closer generation, they need to be willing to give up their thinking and their social comfort sphere from the digital bubble to continue doing the same work as previous generations did, by first asking, what do we want to know? That is the big first question, but that is in the current students' generation, that is something they say, somebody will tell us. So if they do that, it doesn't really work. Second, what goes in line with the ethical conduct, that they respect. At the moment they make a mistake, it is not a pain, it's not a punishment. And here it comes for the corporation. Give an incentive to labor when they make a mistake, trial and error, as long as employees are willing to learn from their mistakes. if you want to generate the next generation of innovation, it doesn't come just by doing one experiment and then everything works. So especially with Atom in that business, you know, it requires a few more than 2 or 3 experiments. But the shareholder, the stock exchange will call, hey, you should be smart, and smart means 1 attempt, it works, because we have no cash to burn. So this is implicit, the expectation, not explicitly. But at the moment you start incentivizing and motivating for making mistakes, as long as you learn from the mistakes, and when you change the procedure, you change the expectation, and you do not simply take anything given by somebody third party, but you create a new part, then people are getting more creative, and they have the courage and they have the backbone to say, right, I made a mistake. It's our job, that's what we are doing at Higher School of Economics. All our students, by purpose, we want, or at least I want them to make a big mistake. I want that. And then, when we see they understood that was a mistake from their own, and they have the courage to say, it was my mistake, and I say, well done, well done. Now you admitted you made a mistake, and you told it to me as your big boss here in that sense. I tell you how to change it. So this is the lifelong learning from your mistake. This is a perception of this lifelong learning. It's not about going to a further class, to an MBA course or whatsoever every year. No. Lifelong learning means also improve yourself, improve your behavior, and contribute to these routines. Similar, when you talk about organizations and development of organizations, it should be clear in an internal cultural and climate and atmosphere that an employee should feel free to challenge established routines. So we see it in many organizations where the employee is simply satisfied with all the routines, and in the cafeteria they sit together and they start complaining, that doesn't work, that's inefficient, and that is bad, etc., etc. But a human-centric organization will enforce and will encourage employees to open their mouth and raise their voice and say, hey, this is bad. I have an idea. And here it comes. It's not about educating a generation which is only critical and saying, this is bad, this is bad, this is bad. We know it's bad. We know there's potential to improve. But when you criticize something, you should make a proposal. This is constructive criticism. That is a feature, that is something I believe which we lost over the last probably decade, especially with the emergence of his social media, where we see big shitstorms for many very simple things and whatsoever. So making a mistake in the digital world is a bad idea. You have a lot of enemies. They can kill you, they can knock you out. So we have, from the perspective of universities and our education and training, we have to counteract on that. I know exactly, if my students feel unhappy and they complain about the grade, it might happen that they place at Facebook, Dr. Meissner did this and this and this, I don't agree, he's an idiot. And then one or the other jumps on, there can be a strong shitstorm. But I say, right, if it is like the case and I made a mistake, simply tell me and I will react. But if not, so it will finish somehow. This is one part in the teaching story. Second, when we talk about university, we have the similar issues about ethics, sustainability, and responsibility for the research stream. In terms of research, what goes especially for the younger generation of researchers, what we try to implement in their mindsets is think about sustainability in a way when you start running an experiment. Think about where do the ingredients come from. So don't take it for granted that you get all ingredients you need for your experiment and then you just have some finding. We want you to think about your whole life cycle of everything you use for your experiment. Because it doesn't make any sense talking about sustainability when you take a lot of ingredients for which to gather them, raw materials, you have to cut the Amazonas. It doesn't make any sense. So a sustainability we try to implement is thinking in terms of the full life cycle, in terms of the planet. So not the life cycle, and especially not only recycling in Moscow City, but think about what you're doing at developing the next technology generation. It might harm the Brazilian Amazonas. It might harm Papua New Guinea or whatsoever. So have a broader scale in sustainability terms. And I believe I cut here. We have a coffee break and we can continue talking. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Meissner, also about reminding us about the coffee break. This thought will warm our heart for another an hour or so. With you, Dr. Meissner, and with Gavri before you, we explored the relationships of human centricity to employers, to employees, how workforce is changing, how the views of employers is changing, and so on. Now, if this is all happening, it must be that education is changing as well. And this topic we would like to discuss with Dr. Griffiths. Dr. Griffiths, when education is changing, on everybody's mind is one word, the technology. The technology is the key disruptor of education today. So we are wondering what would be your view on your position on how education is changing overall and what is the role technology plays in that? Thank you very much.
Thank you. It's a very interesting question, very timely question, and certainly a very challenging question to answer, but I'll do my best to do that. I'd like to start, however, by thanking Rosatom for the invitation to participate in this really timely event focused on human centricity. Something that's very close to my heart and something I spend a lot of time on, so I'm quite pleased to be participating in the event today. Over the course of the next few minutes, I will provide my thoughts on specifically how the higher education system where I'm working will evolve to attract and adequately train students and human capital needed for an emerging, evolving global economy. And that's a challenging issue to address because there's two sides to it. We need to consider what this future economy will be, and we've touched on that already a little bit, and I'll elaborate my thoughts in a short while. And then also, what does the future generation of students look like? What are we trying to do in order to attract the best and the brightest that are coming to us in the future? Not looking in the past, we're looking toward the future of where our human capital will be coming to us. Starting off with the future economy, when I think about future economy, I have to consider what happens over a multiple decade perspective. That's what's really important for a higher educational institution, which is trying to train the future workforce. The way I see the future is by the middle of the century, as many of us are aware, we're going to be faced with a society that's older, much more affluent and more urbanized than any other point in history, and that's going to change the way we perceive the world. The population growth is going to be considerable. We'll go from 8 billion people roughly to 10 billion people. Lots of population growth in developing countries, particularly Africa and Asia. So we'll have new parts of the world from which our human capital are going to come. Global economy is going to get bigger, as I mentioned already. It's going to be more affluent, and we may see an economy that more than doubles in size, or at least doubles in size in terms of GDP over the next 30 years in which this happens. And although the exact trajectory is not for certain of how this economic growth is going to happen, we are certain that there's going to be a lot of different elements that are involved in how it unfolds. Those include climate change, challenging geopolitics, new technology developments that we've not yet seen in any precedented way. And so it's going to be a very exciting time, but a challenging time. And so if you come to that latter point I mentioned on technology, today, I'm speaking to my students, and we're talking at the university about what we call the Fourth Industrial Revolution, 4IR. Everyone's been hearing about this. By the middle of this century, 4IR will be old news. The way we will talk about the Industrial Revolution is probably well into the fifth. And the fifth Industrial Revolution won't be about how exciting things like machine learning are, or artificial intelligence. It's going to be more about how human-machine interactions have evolved and the profound impact that's having on multiple sectors, not the least of which is the topic of the day, education. The transformed educational system will need to produce human capital that is very well versed in a whole new world where digital is having a major impact across everything that we do. But not just the digitalization itself, we have to have very agile thinkers with strong foundations in analytical thinking, complex problem solving, and human interaction. Students will be able to be adaptable to this set of new skills required, we hope. That's why we have to train them appropriately. And I expect that many of them are going to confront us with a whole new set of things they want from the educational system, which brings me to what does the future student look like? Today, as we think about the future of our students, we're talking about the workforce that's currently causing us the educational system to evolve in the present day, which is what we say is Gen Z. those students that were born near the start of the 21st century, maybe a bit after. And these students are called digital natives because they're already very familiar with digital technologies in all aspects of their lives. In fact, given their everyday continued interaction with digital technology, this educational platform that we have to build for Gen Z needs to be one that's very visually oriented. Imagine we have students who are on mobile phones all day. They don't expect to sit in a classroom and watch someone up at a chalkboard. That would be almost something you'd see in a museum for the students of today. They want to see things that are digital, real-time, and experiential. And that's the current generation. The next generation of students that we're looking at, we call them Gen Alpha, many may have heard this term, is even going to be more digitally oriented. And everything I talked about previously about what the future will be versus what we expect it to be is going to be right with these students from the day of their birth. Talk about artificial intelligence, augmented reality, virtual reality. This is going to be an expected part of educational experience. These technologies are going to be part of everyday life. Furthermore, this Gen Alpha set of students is going to be accustomed to a level of volatility and global change, touching back on some of those points I mentioned earlier, not previously experienced by any generation. And so the expectation from higher education is it will continually evolve as well to suit what I believe will be very fluid educational needs. That brings me to the educational system. Given the considerations, how do we make education exciting for students? We think about the economy, we think about changing nature of jobs, we think about the profile of the students. How in the Middle East and globally are we going to nurture the talent? The first consideration, we need to consider that our educational offerings are being enabling for the employment, which we already heard from Gary is going to be changing quite rapidly, and what I was touching on previously. Very specifically, the students are going to be required to be participating in a digitally enabled workforce. The workforce of the future is not just about data scientists and data engineers, though. Rather, we want individuals that can work alongside and with algorithms as technically savvy domain experts. They can complement, of course, those that are deep into the coding and the mathematics, the computer scientists and data engineers. Too often today, I see in our academic programs that we have traditional programs training students for jobs that may be extinct soon, general management, or jobs that require routine skills that can be easily automated. It's an ever-increasing number of advances being made in machine learning, natural language processing, computer vision, which are going to make so many things that we do, even at higher level jobs today, not necessary, because we can work with these systems in order to make decisions, make informed decisions, and when the decision is not too difficult to make, we can automate some decisions. So there'll be a whole set of things that we can do without necessarily having the workforce directly involved hands-on. So we have to be prepared for that. The future economy is going to be demanding of individuals with hard skills so they know what is coding, data management, data storage, supercomputing, data analytics, but also it's going to be the soft skills required, human interaction, entrepreneurship. As I said, not everything is going to be about the technology. It's going to be a whole new set of activities which allow us to go above and beyond what technology can do. The demands will definitely not be static, as we're thinking here at Duke University in the Middle East, what we have to do. Yet higher educational programs must be designed with curricula that are regularly updated and supportive of continuous education. And we also have to acknowledge that a degree is really the only beginning of the future educational journey. It's certainly not the end, especially in the volatile world with all this technology change that we've been talking about so far. We additionally need to be sure that the educational programs that we are providing students allow them of internships and practical experience. I mentioned this generation, very expectant of experiential learning. So it's not going to be anything about how much time is spent in a classroom. It's more about how well you know to apply your skills with your future employers. I think that's going to be quite critical because we want to connect fundamentals with application. As already noted, the next generation of students is going to value experiences over classroom learning. And so these internships with future employers, they're preparing themselves adequately to work with this next generation of students is going to be very important. So handpicking and selecting the right potential employers, I think, is a university job, which is going to continue to evolve. Beyond the educational offerings, the second consideration is technology itself. So we mentioned one of the questions is how will technology support the evolving educational experience to support the next generation of students? As we're all aware, the pandemic, the health pandemic, put us online very quickly. Some of us struggled quite a bit at our universities to get very fluid and regular online-based courses to work well. Now it's every day. I mean, even as I can't join you today in Dubai, I'm able to participate with you via the web. And this is, I think, is a great complement to what is done in physical interaction, because not every time can we have a student, for instance, learning in the location in which the teaching is being done. So this is obviously a great opportunity. And this expansion of digitalization is only going to continue. Although much of the online learning that we experienced was in the result to a crisis, the tools, as you can see, they're really robust. And so as we start to evolve these tools further in the future, educational platforms, I'll mention briefly in a minute, they're going to go much beyond these computer-based tools. You see the number of different experiential capabilities coming, which are pretty exciting for us to think about. Platforms like Zoom, which I'm using here, will continue to evolve, that's for sure. And they'll improve the computer-based learning experience. But I believe some very exciting opportunities come back to what we talked about today as being part of the 4IR. Technologies, artificial intelligence mixed with augmented reality and virtual reality can bring some very exciting opportunities for hands-on learning experience, which is never before possible. If we consider augmented reality, if you consider exposing a student to a technology that's being used across industries for training, enhanced worker safety and productivity, will allow them to understand, one, a tool that they may use when they go on to their next career in the future, and also they can be benefiting from these tools today as they go about their education, particularly with hands-on laboratory-based work. As you can imagine an augmented reality where you're able to get real-time information to support you from any community while you do things physically is an amazing opportunity, which we're going to continue to exploit, I think, and build upon in the future. Of course, virtual reality, it goes without saying that being in a completely immersive environment educationally will allow students to be exposed to things that we never thought would be possible before. When you're geographically confined or constrained to one place, being able to understand the world and understand all the science and technology around you is difficult. But when you get into a virtual world where this is now available to you, you get all kind of opportunities for the interactions with the technologies and the science itself, as well as your peers and colleagues around the world. So I'm very excited about that. I think it's going to be fantastic. We hear about the metaverse. I don't know how that'll play out, but as a complement to that discussion, I think the use of virtual reality is going to be quite impactful, regardless of what happens in the social media domains around the world. Now to the Middle East, Khalifa University, which is in UAE, in Abu Dhabi, a great deal of what I've talked about is already being considered and put to practice. We established a computational data science program that's aimed at producing graduates that bring the domain expertise through coursework, couple that to internships, and then go on to their future employers to work with data science and, of course, data engineering skills, but also have success with those that need to be in a specific domain. The program we established is actually set up with the Abu Dhabi Investment Authority. Now, Abu Dhabi Investment Authority, as you can imagine, is quite interested in finance, but the idea wasn't necessarily to have all financiers. We want these students to get the fundamental skills in this area and maybe take an internship with a national oil company. Then they can be part of the workforce of the future in the energy sector. And it could be with the military. These students could go on and be part of the military complex. It's all about the fundamental tied to practical application. So it's quite exciting for us here. We also are looking at innovation entrepreneurship. I don't think many students in the future are going to stay with one job very long. So understanding how to think creatively, be an entrepreneur. If you don't build your own business, be an entrepreneur within an organization is important. And so we have students bring their ideas to our Khalifa Innovation Center so they can develop their ideas. Likewise, technology to support our educational programs, the graduate programs, education and research are deeply intertwined. We offer many opportunities for coursework with activities across our 20 research centers and 3 research institutes. And we talk about all the areas that I think are the most important for the future, domain-wise. Energy, water, climate, health, space, robotics, intelligent systems, advanced materials are quite key. And finally, Khalifa University, well, we're benefiting the UAE. I believe it's going to be important to consider that not all countries in the Middle East have the same opportunities we do. And so one of the things we need to talk about, and I'm sure will come up in the human-centric approach to thinking, is how do we ensure there's educational justice to make these digital platforms available widely? Some countries are struggling to meet their basic needs, while we in the UAE are very fortunate that we're at the forefront of technology. And so I don't want to leave you with the impression that everything is settled and we have technology available to all. Hopefully we can use the technology to expand our global reach, but we don't want to have the have and have not educational system in the future. So with that, I'll summarize. I think the future of higher education is going to be driven by the intersection of employment, students, and new technologies coming together in different ways. While many of the key issues that attract students, educate them are universal, context is always key. And so we do want to make sure that we're always keeping an eye toward having platforms available to all so we can have a global population which is well educated. That, I thank you.
as it were. Yeah, it works again. And thank you very much, Dr. Griffiths. Very considerate, and I particularly love the point about the learners of the future, and also workers of the future, and workplace of the future. And as such, the organizers honored me with an announcement that I'm about to make. Today, 4:30 p.m., there's a virtual tour on Beloyarskaya nuclear station. I don't know about you, I've only seen nuclear stations in James Bond movies, so I'm very interested and will definitely come. You're all cordially invited. We continue. I'd like to ask a question to Dr. Abraham, and I'd like us to get even more practical with this. Dr. Abraham, well, we're discussing projects, human projects, ESG projects, educational reforms, and so on. It all costs money. As soon as an employer, a CEO of an employer, decides to spend more money on human centricity, immediately this moment, the investors and the shareholders gets less money, at least less money soon. What do you think is then the right balance to strike between the shareholders' interests and the stakeholders and the employees' interests? And also, when you are, of course, as a business school, prepare the future leaders of this world, the future CEOs of this world. So what do you tell them about this topic? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good day to everybody, and warm greetings from SP Jain School of Global Management. I want to, first of all, thank Rosatom and the organizers for inviting me for this very critical question. In the age of artificial intelligence, robotics, big data, and machine learning, where is the human being? And in order to answer that question from a broader perspective, I'd like to share with you a short presentation. But I want to answer this question in this age of AI on one hand, and shareholder centricity. Is truly a human-centric business possible? The tagline I want to use is actualizing business, which includes, of course, technology and human potential. There's a simple cartoon that probably describes the evolution of stakeholder capitalism. From colonial capitalism in the 14th to 15th century, to the industrial capitalists, who were then known as the robber barons, 19th century, to shareholder capitalism in the 20th century. I think we've come a long way to look at stakeholder capitalism. Capitalism by itself is not wrong. I think it's done a lot of good for the world at large. And these are some very interesting statistics to actually prove that capitalism does work. It has helped lower the child mortality rate. It has extended life expectancy by decades. It has made education, art, culture available to more people. It has also allowed the planet to sustain 7 billion plus people, and it's definitely helping eradicate poverty. And in terms of literacy, it has increased worldwide literacy from 12% to 86% worldwide. These are, of course, interesting statistics. But the irony is that the misuse of capitalism's power by some has led to negative stereotypes such as greed, misconduct, and exclusion. Now, interestingly, greed was celebrated in literary context and in movies like Wall Street, where the hero comes and says, greed is good. Ethics, morality, values were all thrown out of the corporate context, and exclusion of an elite group of people who would decide and drive the destiny of the world. This inaccurate way of thinking about business, we thought, was an unshakable narrative. It's been going on for decades, perpetuated, of course, by a certain group of During the 1950s and 60s, maybe a decade or 15 years after World War II, there were two people who were primarily responsible for a huge shift in the understanding of capitalism. Ayn Rand, from an individualistic perspective, who said selfishness needs to be celebrated through her philosophic proponent of objectivism. And Milton Friedman, the Nobel laureate in economics, brought in a very radical, rather negative perspective that the only objective of a business is to enhance shareholder wealth. Only shareholder wealth, the investor. And for the last 60 years, corporates across the world seem to have happily embraced this dictum. When Margaret Thatcher, also known as the Iron Lady, brought in Thatcherism, which was an offtake of Friedmanomics, as we call it, was on one hand beneficial to a certain percentage of people, but to the larger sector of society, it wasn't. We could call it by a fancy, rather derogatory term called casino capitalist, which is all about gambling for the wealthy, the rich, and the prosperous at the cost of the rest of the world. Where could we look at moving from casino capitalism to karma capitalism? And what is karma capitalism? Karma capitalism is probably doing good and making good profits. So the question, are we at a pivotal moment that we shift from stakeholders and shareholders? And where did it start? I shared with you Rand and Friedman. And then it probably took a different divergence during the beginning of the 21st century. Thanks to scandals like Enron, Global Crossing, Parmalat, WorldCom, Tyco, the list is endless. And more recently, we have seen other kinds of scandals from Germany to United States to India, all over the world. We are finding the shareholder capitalism born out of greed, born out of objectivism, has virtually ripped the corporate and capitalistic economy. But I have good news for you. There is a better way to be a capitalist, a way that will create a better world for everyone, a way forward for humankind to liberate the heroic spirit of business and our collective entrepreneurial creativity so we can be free to solve the many daunting challenges we face. Human-centric business provides us the way. But before I proceed, I want to make sure that this is not just a feel-good motivational statement. In the last couple of decades, there has been tremendous amount of research that says mankind has not just survived, but thrived because of our collective creativity. We call it collaboration, cooperation, which has actually trumped the age-old mantra of competition. And this is real. Last year, there were two best-selling books, one by London Business School professor Gary Hamel, which was titled Humanocracy. Strongly recommended, because it's the opposite of bureaucracy, which is about protocols and processes and procedures, and very less to do with human beings. And in that book, Professor highlights some amazing case studies from China to Mexico to US and to other parts of the world, where companies which are human-centric are actually making a huge difference. And then there was another fascinating book by award-winning historian, Dutch historian, Rutger Bregman, simply titled Humankind. And I think it's important for us to realize. And this year, we are also seeing some more new interesting titles, Survival of the friendliest, written by award-winning Harvard professors. So I think the world is now realizing through cutting-edge research that the world indeed is human-centric. Yes, on one hand, we need to embrace the great technologies of artificial intelligence, machine learning, and all the other digital platforms. But let's not forget that we as humans need to put humanity above technology so that technology does not overwhelm us. Welcome to human-centered business. What does it mean? Because in the last decades, we've seen that the main objective that dominated companies was profit maximization and shareholder centricity. So what now? Is there a way out from this morass? Not just through corporate scandals, but I think a new mindset, a new twist to the understanding of what can happen. Simon Sinek, one of the world's most respected authors and consultants, says, understand structure and you can build a company. Understand people and you can build a business. So far, we have had some fascinating expositions on the focus on the employee. And I'm very happy those conversations are taking place. And I thank the organizers for kickstarting that. One of our esteemed panelists spoke about the power of purpose. I'm picking off from Simon Sinek's contribution to the world of wisdom, where he spoke about starting with why. What is the organization's successful beyond the status quo with an incredibly strong foundation? This is for a human-centered business. How to have a human-centered focus in the way value is created, not profits, delivered and captured. The people that create the value are intrinsically motivated by purpose, autonomy, and mastery, thanks to Daniel Pink's contribution, because they want to maximize the value, again, not profits. They challenge the status quo in everything they do. These organizations are innovative. Their leaders and others have to adapt to survive. Why? And that, I think, is the most important. In fact, thankfully, one of our esteemed panelists actually touched upon it, the power of purpose. A meaningful purpose that's larger than the organization itself. And watch out, Gen Z, 2020s, 2021, these people are more focused towards not just the what, not how you make profits, but why we as an organization exist. And that, I think, is a very critical question to answer. Human-centered businesses believe that success starts with maximizing value for all stakeholders, in which profit is the result, a byproduct, not the other way around. So if you want to build a business model that effectively creates value for people, you need to start with the following question. Which value or what value can we create for all our stakeholders? So I'm broadening the scope of human centricity to look at the entire spectrum of human beings, be it customers, be it suppliers, be it distributors, be it employees, and of course, society at large, and the environment that we had so grandly messed up in the last century. The 4 pillars, or rather the 5 pillars of human-centered business. Number 1 is stakeholder focus, which I will elaborate in a moment. Human-centric leadership, which means not just leading with technology, but leading with your heart as well. Compassion, empathy. Thanks to cutting-edge research from the annals of neuroscience, we today realize that we all have a God-given factor of empathy and compassion embedded into our biological brain system called mirror neurons. So it's high time we move from just leadership to human-centric leadership. And then human-centric management, which we saw manifested in more ways than one during the pandemic. We had many organizations that looked at the human side with compassion, with empathy, and looked at how the processes, the policies had to be radically relooked to be more human-centric. And with all this, it creates a human-centric culture, a culture which values people. Companies like Southwest Airlines, FedEx, and you have companies across the world who do it. And we have a lovely term for it, and I'm coming to that in a moment. The most important starting point of human-centered business, as we said earlier, is a meaningful purpose. Its success begins with why, with a sense of purpose, and not profit. Profit, as we said, is a byproduct, is just one of the after effects of purpose. Apple, the Wright brothers, Martin Luther King, they all share a strong drive that distinguishes them and helps them to be successful. A drive that goes beyond the outcome of value creation for people and profit. Here is a counterintuitive question. Can you really build a business on love? What has love got to do with business, with the corporate environment? Almost about 15 years back, 3 professors joined forces, Raj Sisodia, Jack Seth, and David Wolfe, late Professor David Wolfe, talked about firms of endearment. Endearment, another profound word for love, and wanted to find out how world-class companies profit from passion and purpose. And look at all the words that are there to enable this beautiful term called endearment. Compassion, love, caring, soulful, joy, and authenticity. Does this really translate into bottom line profits, into value? Let's find out. So they analyzed some outstanding companies across the world. It started with American companies, then went on to European companies. Today we have this research extended to international firms of endearment. But before I give you the final good news in terms of what it means to translate love into bottom line profits, I want to introduce a very interesting, simple acronym for all of us to understand stakeholders. SPICY, as we call it, very easy to remember. Society, which means all of us in all corners of the world, 200 plus countries, different nationalities, different tribes, different languages, but doing good for all of us. Looking at partners, partners here includes suppliers and distributors, very important at both ends of the value chain. Investors, whom we used to call as shareholders, people who have put in their money. Customers, we definitely need to take care of them as well. Employees, which can never be ignored. And last but not the least, the environment, which we have messed up so badly. In fact, if we could focus on all these 6 factors of the spectrum, then that's where true value really lies. Look at the financial implications. Human-centric firms of love outperform every other company. US firms of endearment, international firms of endearment, good to great companies, and Standard & Poor. Let me explain the context of this research. So what they did was to look at the cumulative returns from Standard & Poor, which is, as we all know, a good benchmark for the best performing companies across the world. Then there was award-winning Jim Collins, Professor Jim Collins, good to great companies. Some of them are no longer great, but nevertheless, they looked at their returns. Then they looked at international firms of endearment, and then the United States firms of endearment. The proof of the pudding is there for all of us to see. And I think it validates that when we take care of our stakeholders, the fundamental law of human behavior, the law of reciprocity, kicks inside. And finally, this is what happens.
Dr. Abraham, we're just slightly out of time.
I'm finishing in the last slide.
Thank you.
And just before the pandemic, 2019, we had the remarkable research done by Tories, which said, compared ethical companies, Standard & Poor, good to great, and stakeholder-focused companies. And this again validates that stakeholder centricity is going to be the future, which covers all of humanity, all of the planet, and all of society. I want to end with saying that humanity is one spirit. Natural resources are limited, but our human resources are infinite. Let's together create a human-centric society. Thank you very much, and thank you for the opportunity. And if anybody wants to get in touch, my email is there. Thank you, good luck, and God bless. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Finally, with this, we are moving into the business domain, starting with Ms. Maha Al-Katan. Thank you very much, Ms. Al-Katan, for being with us. Can we check if your microphone works? There's supposed to be a button.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. Perfect.
Great. Fantastic.
Thank you.
If that's okay, let me ask you just a few questions, starting with a general one on what do you see happening in the region overall? Is there more demand for human centricity as the years go by? And what are the efforts that your company is doing to create value for employees and the societies in different regions when you operate?
First of all, I'd like to, I think, okay.
Please speak in the mic. Actually,
Yeah.
can you please give a normal microphone to Ms. Al-Katan?
I think it's good now, right?
Yeah, now it's
Yeah.
good.
Yeah, it's good.
Thank you.
So I'd like to start by thanking Rosatom for inviting me to this forum. A lot of the panelists spoke about the great resignation that's happening in the United States and the West, I would say mostly. I won't call it great resignation, I would call it the great reshuffle, because people are leaving company A and moving to company B. They are not leaving a company and staying home, right? So you leave company A and you move to company B. And there are many reasons that came up during the pandemic. Did the company take care of me? Was there, did I trust the company? Did I feel safe with the company? Did I actually connect with the overall purpose of the company? So people made conscious choices of leaving company A to company B, which made it really clear for all of us that human centricity is very important. Now people have options to leave you and go to work to any company. When it comes to this region, we did not see the great reshuffle as much. And I would say that goes down to how the region is set up and what the government is doing about it. Let's go and talk about the government of UAE. We reduced working week from 5 days to 4.5 days, which gives people a great work-life balance. You get more time over the weekend to be with your family, with your friends. Flexibility is there. When it comes to the biggest trend that I've seen in the region, and I think it's a global trend, is the move to digitization. Digitization is no longer an option. For any company to be relevant in today's economy, you have to adopt technology to enable your business. And in this process, we noticed the shortage of talent in technology space. And if you see, because of the remote working options today, you can hire talent anywhere in the world and they will do the job for you. So the war for talent in this space is not local, it's global. You are competing with Silicon Valley and startups. How can you attract talent and make them choose you over those companies? Goes back to what a fellow panelist was mentioning, purpose. We noticed that a lot of the younger generation are choosing their job based on the purpose of the company and not just the job and the pay. They'll ask you, what is the purpose of your company? What are you trying to do? And we're very fortunate at DP World that our purpose is so noble that we were able to attract many talent who chose us over the companies at Fortune 500 or even in Silicon Valley. And our purpose is to enable global trades and make it more efficient, give businesses access to new markets, help economies grow, help GDPs of countries grow. So it was really important and a very noble purpose that helped us attract talent. And going back to your last point, how DP World creates value in societies, we look at sustainability as a long-term pathway in all activities we do, be it business, be it people development, be it wherever we are in environments and communities. Our three main pillars of sustainability are women empowerment, education, biodiversity, and oceanic health. I'll just touch quickly on education. The purpose we opened the DP World Pavilion in Expo this year is to inspire the future generations and show them what we do and how the global trade flows, we invited many students to hackathons, student career talk shows, a lot of activities around students from schools and universities. And we will continue to do that during the course of Expo. After Expo, we will actually turn our pavilion to be a logistics institute to develop the future logisticians of this region. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Very inspiring. Is it okay if I ask a few more questions? Thank you, Mr. Katan. You touched upon diversity and women leadership. Do you see this topic now getting a new ring, a new meaning, a new purpose in the years of pandemic and the new reality we are facing? What are the initiatives, things that you're doing in your company that you're proud of?
Yeah. So let's go back to basics, right? When it comes to capacity building and women empowerment, it is not about treating them differently, giving them special training because they have a different need. Women are equally capable, they are equally smart, right? So we focus on actually creating an inclusive culture where they feel valued and welcomed. We focus on removing all those unconscious biases that have been lingering around the perceptions that this job is for a man and this job is for a woman, right? And finally, we also focus on we said the inclusive culture and the removing biases. We, at DP World, we actually hired our first inclusion manager, and her job is basically to make sure that there is awareness in DP World about all of those unconscious biases and removing those biases so we level the playing field for our people. We look at our people as talent, not in terms of gender, but as talent. So it's very important for us to just level the playing field, remove all those unconscious biases, and create a culture of inclusion where everyone feels equally appreciated. And there are many ways you can do that. I'll just share a quick example. If you look at a crane operator's job in a terminal, it is operating a heavy-duty crane 50 meters above the ground in very harsh environment, and you don't get a toilet up there, right? Traditionally, mostly men would like to apply for the job, and men would be in that job. With technology, where there is so much criticism about technology eliminating jobs, actually technology brings you so many more opportunities than it eliminates jobs. So you have to look at it in a positive way. When we built our Terminal 3 in Jabal Ali, we automated the crane driver's job. So you no longer need to be sitting 50 meters above the crane, moving boxes from ship to the yard. You could actually sit in a remote control air-conditioned room with a 2-week training. From your computer, you actually can operate a crane. We posted the job. 100% of people who applied to run those remote control cranes were women. So imagine a traditional 100% male dominant job. Today, we have 100% women driving our cranes from a remote control room in Terminal 3 of Jabal Ali. So there are opportunities, and you have to find those opportunities as a company.
For sure, thank you. This is a very inspiring example, but I cannot help asking. It sounds very expensive. Does it pay off, and when do you think is a good horizon to expect it to pay off?
I think there's so much, plenty of research out there. You can just Google and put in there advantages of diversity, advantages of gender diversity. I will not repeat that, but thousands of studies have been already done, and we should all accept it today that diversity and inclusion does not only bring value in terms of softer stuff, but it brings value in terms of business, in terms of numbers. So it's there, and I think it's time we accept it and we start working towards it.
Thank you. Do you mind me asking just one more final question? Thank you very much, because what you are describing in DP World sounds like a very advanced HR systems with advanced processes and things in place and so on. It must be that your understanding of success of what you do is also a little bit different from what is normally has been the case 5-7 years ago. So I cannot help asking, how do you define success for yourself, Ms. Al-Khattam?
For people department
For
in
the
general?
people department, for what you do.
I think success for us is the satisfaction of our employees, right? So I would say we run our employee satisfaction survey every 2 years. And for me, success is the more the satisfaction survey goes up, the more we feel successful as a department. And the satisfaction survey is about everything. Are you satisfied with the company? Do you feel safe in the company? Do you have a good career with us? Do you feel you understand the vision of the company? Is your voice heard? Do you get equal opportunity? And all of these things are actually activities that are enabled by people department. So if we do our job right, employees will be satisfied, and that will show off in your balance sheet.
Very good. Ms. Al-Khattam, thank you very much for participating in the session today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. With this, we continue the business section, and the question goes to Mr. Dabdoub. And the question to you is the following. You are a Chief People Officer as well. Yeah, I think it's off. It's okay. If it doesn't turn red, it's okay. You are a Chief People Officer as well, but your business context is very different. It's based on projects and clients. And the question is, how is human centricity working for you? How do you make it work for your employees on the projects and for your clients, where sometimes maybe you see the client, you have a project, and then you don't work with them for 5-7 years down the road, but you still need to do something about human centricity. Thank you.
Thank you, and good afternoon, everybody. Let me just brief a little bit about what we do, and I'm sure many of you already know what CCC is. I'm going to just put a few slides, share with you a few slides on looking at what it is that we do. In brief, CCC was established in 1952, that's around 70 years ago, specializing in EPC projects related to oil and gas, petrochemical, industrial plants, water, wastewater, civil, heavy mechanical, heavy civil, power, renewable energy pipelines, and what have you. And we are spread around across 40 countries all over the world, all the way from Australia to the Caribbean. In the Middle East, we are heavily available. And in 2017, when we were at peak as a manpower extensive company, we had 192,000 people on our payroll, coming from 80 different nationalities. Having said that, this is a small framework where we provide training for the first professional roles upwards, where engineers at the graduate level, they join us and we start their career plan with us, where we train them for some years before they start growing into the company and becoming part of the middle, then top, then executive management level. We do have lots of training and development for all our staff. We focus, of course, on our core staff. And we have, over the years, managed to have a large, how can I say, a large service per individual into the company because of our continuous training and development that we provide our people. As an example, the average age of our leadership staff or team is 64 years, average age of the individual, with a service years of 35 years. I am I'm at the second level, which is at the top management, and I'm at around 30 years of service with CCC since 1992, in fact. So we do have, as I said, lots of training and development programs available for everybody in the company. starting from the standard traditional work rotation and on-the-job training, as well as face-to-face courses, which for now we stopped due to the COVID-19. We have high flyers programs for those who would be assuming leadership roles in the future. So they go under extensive, they are very selective, but they go under extensive training for a period of ranging from 6 months to almost a year and a half. And then we have the in-house webinars, in-house virtual instructor-led training. We are also partnering with Coursera, the world-renowned online learning platform, providing training to our staff. And of course, we have the enhancement and upskilling and reskilling of skills, mainly technical skills. And we concentrate on providing this to all of our staff, but also, and this comes back to your question, Anton, about how we integrate into the countries where we will be working for short durations or long durations, and how we continue doing that. We are providing, in every country we operate, we are mostly available on long-term, if you want, presence. Very few places we were just over a period of the project and then we left. But in most of our operations, we have long presence of tens of years because of the connections and the good relations we have with clients all over these countries. But in all cases, when you're talking about project specific and how do we contribute towards, if you want, the challenges of having to deal with the local content of, if you want, of that region, which ties in with the CSR activities that we do. As an example, we have presence in long-term presence in those countries, in many other countries as well, but those countries where we have the highest concentration of the local content, where we provide training to our staff and where we upskill their technical skills. We work on two different fronts, if you want. We have the one front where we select number of people and we give them training for 6 months, and the successful ones, we hire them immediately into the company. This is the one hand, and this is mostly common in Oman and Saudi Arabia. We have also the other way of doing things where we hire people, and as they are into the employment of the company, we work on enhancing their skills while they are employed. But in all cases, as part of our contribution towards our responsibility and sustainability with the clients, with the countries where we are being hosted, what we do is we have a full-fledged social CSR program, and we have our staff committed to the CSR program through volunteerism. One interesting function that we have had in the past is during our construction of pipeline projects, be it in Madagascar, in Botswana, in Australia, where we have, the pipeline are hundreds of kilometers of length. And as we progress in the construction, we pass through neighboring villages, neighboring communities. So what we do is we actually, as we reach to a certain geographical region of the country, we hire people from that part of from that neighboring village, if you want, for a period of few months until we reach to the next phase where we set into a new region. And again, we continuously get people from that region. We employ them. So we are working on progressing the pipeline, but also getting people from the neighboring villages to work with us and to be part of our employment. And this is extended over so many communities where pipelines pass. Another aspect that you mentioned about what happens in the case of where we don't have much work to do with our clients. One of the things is that we are a company where we try as much as possible, and we have succeeded for all those past years, to maintain employment of our staff on long-term basis. Yes, they do have contracts for specific locations, but we move them around to different locations as the need requires. So engineers may go from Saudi to UAE to Qatar to wherever we have operations. And this is part of their development and part of their exposure to the different geographical locations, different interactions with clients, different interaction with other partners, contractors, getting involved into the community where they are working. And this is how they contribute as members of CCC, as employees of CCC, towards enhancing their skills in order to provide for the community we are working in. And therefore, our staff develop not only through the standard training that we do, but through our mobilization of the staff across the different regions over extended periods and over continuous employment with us. And just to give you a brief on our CSR contributions over the past few years, which we've been concentrating on education, capacity building, and job creation. As I said, we train and then we hire. On health, environment, humanitarian aid and relief, science, technology, and innovation. And this is a small statistic on the CSR activities over the past 3 years, where we have given CSR benefits, if you want, to 15 countries with 12,000 volunteering hours, 1,040 total volunteers, 126 community projects all over our operations, anywhere in the world we are operating. And this is a prime that we do ahead of looking at our businesses. We try to engage with the community in order to establish good rapport with the citizens, with the communities, with the governments, to be able to also gain future possible projects, upcoming projects that may arise in that country. So this is a brief of how we are functioning in terms of development of communities in the countries we are operating in. And we continue to do this, even as we are now a little bit smaller in size due to the overall global environment that we are going through like everybody else. We still do it. And this is something that we will never cease to adopt throughout our operations. I hope that this answers more or less your question, Anton.
It does. Thank you very much, Andre. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, and last, not always not least, we have the honors of concluding the panel section of our session today, Ms. Yulia Uzhakina. The question to you is about how Rosatom, crafting a special bond with employers pretty much dependent with their livelihoods and their families and everything on you, how do you go about human centricity? Thank you.
Thank you, Anton. I'll try to be short, dear colleagues. I'm very happy to be here and to discuss such challenging topic. As Mr. Raul Awad said, human-centric is a philosophy, is a vision. We absolutely agree with this, but we try to implement this approach in our day-to-day life, day-to-day work, and it's very challenging for us. Why? Rosatom included very important goal in its business strategy to become the best company in unlocking the human potential. And we understand that this goal is cannot be achieved without human-centric approach. But why it is a challenge for us? The first, Rosatom is very large. We have 275,000 people, employees in different countries, in different regions of Russia, in different cities. And as we understand, the scale matters when you decide to implement human-centric approach. The second challenge, we believe that individual is not an element of the workforce. A person with unique needs. But people's needs are changing constantly, especially in pandemic period. We can't stick to the usual ways of reskilling, upskilling, in communicating with people, in delivering human resource services. So the challenge is for us to react quickly to people's changing needs. And last but not least challenge for us, our ecosystem, Rosatom's ecosystem in development people covers not only Rosatom's employees. There are different groups of people, kids, children, students, citizens of the cities where Rosatom enterprises are located, and even families of Rosatom's employees. Rosatom Corporate Academy has thousands training programs in different topics. We involved thousands subject matter experts, conduct lectures, marathons, hackathons, trainings, and so on different topics. Natural science, mathematics, engineering, green skills, digital skills, how to meditate if you want, how to make work-life balance, and so on. So the challenge for us to know different needs of different generation and different skill set, as Gary Bowles told us. What do we do in Rosatom? We are keeping our fingers on the pulse through different research, surveys of our social climate and employees' needs. Our researchers showed that Gallup, very famous research company, was right. The specific needs people have to feel engaged and connected to the organization are trust, compassion, stability, and hope. And we try to meet these needs of our people. The second, we are communicating constantly. We have different formats of the communication, for example, video messages from our CEO, large-scale online conferences, information days, and so on. It provides people with very important information about our business results and pandemic situation in Rosatom. The third, we provide our people with the tools for massive socializing. And we understand that we, as human resource managers, as ideologists of this approach, have to shift from mass standardization to mass uniqueness. It's a very hard task for us. We have a lot of trainings. We have a corporate network, Rosatom Live. All these opportunities are available to our employees 24 hours, 7 days in their mobile phones. It's very comfortable for them. And of course, we involve our people in our inspired future. Rosatom adopted new vision, Rosatom 2030, and we started the series of cascade conferences where our top managers present the new strategy and inspired our staff, our people in this future. But the last. We believe that our changes have to start from us. we have to put the needs of employees in the center of all our processes, tools, and so on. And we try to constantly study the employee's journey and employee experience in our company. And this shift in our mindset, like human resource managers, is the hardest task we do. And the second, we try to learn our people to answer the question, what I want, what I need, what is my future? And we try to learn them to learn, because we believe that learn to learn is the main and hardest skill in 21st century. Thank you very much. That's all.
Thank you very much, Yulia. I particularly like the points on empowerment of people to learn and be self-aware, but also on hope, because I think hope is something we all need in the upcoming year. With this, thank you again, all panelists and partners and hosts. We would like to conclude the panel part of our session today and move to the final accord. And I promise it not to be very long, because I know we're standing between you and your coffee break, and also hopefully debates on where we went wrong and what you disagree with and how you would do it differently, which can also be done, of course, during the coffee break just behind me. Tatiana Terentьева referenced in her speech that Rosatom and BCG is involved in creating an index of human centricity. It's not an index yet. It's rather let me use a jargon from Save the World type of movies. It's a prototype. It's a prototype that we are planning together with some of the employers we work with to see how you can measure the human centricity and how you can improve on human centricity. So you can have a big leap, a big step from discussing this on a panel to actually also doing something on in your company or with your professional career. We understand in this effort human centricity, exactly as we discussed on the panel today, is something that you, as a company, you contribute to your employees, but also to their families, the communities they live in, and the society as a whole, society overall. Of course, this is based on numerous trends that we discussed, and I think they were presented skillfully today by Gary and by all our other speakers. I will not go in detail with them. There's the skills gap, the shifting understanding and expectations of the labor force, the ESG agenda that's becoming more and more important, and everything. But this is not what's important. What's important is how the index prototype actually works. We think, and again back to the setting of the goal of this session today, that this is basically an intersection of two grand things, if you want. The human capital things and the things of good HR governance and the company's social responsibility. So between them, we are constructing our survey-based prototype of an index stemming from recruiting to attracting to incentives to development to creating the ESG context and the purpose and everything in one package. So whichever aspect of the human centricity we discussed today, it can be measured and improved upon. Important things about indexes like this, as we believe that they cannot be races. You cannot say that company X is, one has a top place in the index and company Y has number 5, and that's why the company number 5 is somehow worse than the company number 1. It doesn't work this way. The companies are different, the industry is different, their geographic situations are different as well. And the index merely reflects their strategic choices and the priorities that they do, so that they can also learn from each other. If there is another company with the same set or a similar set of priorities, what is it that they do and how they can enrich each other to become stronger in what they do together or in parallel. That's why the index is structured not as a race, not as a ranking, but as a different places within the human capital or the corporate social responsibility fields, so the companies can not compete, but compare with each other. What it gives to a company participating is very clear, is on the surface. So number one, of course, it gives you awareness, gives you information. On this session, we heard, for example, Ms. Maha Al-Katan speaking of which things they're doing in DP World. We heard what is going on in CCC and so on and so on, but there's so many companies, so many employers with brilliant ideas what you can do about your ESG and HR agenda. So of course, to know all this, you can participate in the index. Then, yes, so can you please go and mute whoever is now also talking? Thank you very much. Now, of course, strengthening your own HR brand as participating in this index and being a trendsetter in a particular field and so on is also a huge value that you can get out of it. And finally, for the humanists of the world, we also believe that creating this index together with us is also a value, a humanitarian value that we all share. Participating is super easy. You can see the QR code on the slide here. Just follow the QR, take a photo of the QR code, and get in contact with us, and we'll plug you in. It's a prototype yet. There's also a brochure that we handed over to everybody participating today in person. You can also download it with more details and information on the index. And we are convinced that together with you, we can build these instruments to bring value to all the businesses and the society as a whole. With this, let me thank everybody, our panelists, our hosts and partners, our audience for being together on this session with us today. And whoever is with us live, I would like to invite you in the space just behind me for a coffee break and debate, questions and answer, and everything you would like. Thank you. Have a great day and great year.
We breathe energy. We depend on energy. We produce energy. We transform energy into brilliant ideas for a greener planet. For medicine. For clean water. For safer food. For our future. Energy for life. Ross Atom.